And welcome to yet another edition of Ben's Junk, the show where the junk is so plentiful, old Benny Boy at times forgets just how plentiful his junk is. So, anyway, with that awful introduction out of the way, it was an appropriate one because a little story time here. Last summer, as you may or may not know, I leased a storage unit and I moved a whole ton of stuff in there. And one of the things I found as I was trying to gather stuff to take down there, even though it's mostly archive related stuff in there, I found my old comic book collection from when I was a kid. And honestly, the briefcase here was just a cheap, convenient, easy method of throwing them all in one place. And honestly, I just kind of chucked them in the briefcase, so I don't even really remember what's in there. And when I went to pull this out of the storage unit, I just opened up the briefcase to make sure that this was my comic collection. So this will be just as much an experience for me as it is for you. So I've got this thing unlocked, and oh my god, I've given away my combo number for my briefcase. Oh, what am I gonna do? Anyway, let's open this sucker up. And somehow I sense at this angle and at this distance, I'm not gonna have a whole lot of luck with this. So, why don't we take a cut here and we'll start going through all the comics in here. So right at the top of the heap, here's one I do remember and remember fairly distinctly. This is, well, my family moved to Denver in 1991, and just after we moved here, I think we got this from a grocery store newsstand. They got me this issue, first issue evidently, of Woody Woodpecker Digest magazine, and not my handwriting. So, I remember carrying this around. It got water damaged. It got every conceivable kind of damage, I think, in the time I was carrying this thing around like a crazy person. But, honestly, I don't remember any of the comics. Actually, I'd be willing to bet pretty heavily I don't remember the plots of any comic that you're gonna see here. I don't even remember this part, though, for how much I carried this around. I don't remember ever owning a stamp that said top secret, but I must have. But, yeah, on the back we got an ad for the movie Beethoven, which I remember really hating. I haven't seen that price since it came out, but I remember not liking it. And we got some TV listings here. So, Casper and Friends used to air, let's see, here in Denver, on Channel 31, the Fox affiliate, at 6:30 in the morning, and I probably watched it, and I don't remember a thing about it. Okay, so let's see. Here's another Digest magazine. I'm not sure when this is from. There's an ad in here that says 92, so I'm going to call this 92. And I'm going to break archive tradition here because I just don't want the extra bit of editing, but yeah, it's Disney's, or Disney's, Colossal Comics collection from sometime in 1992. And let's see, we got Darkwing Duck and the lobster from Little Mermaid, Sebastian, I think, Goofy, and Scrooge McDuck, or some other rich uncle of Huey, Dewey, and Louie. I don't really remember. And of course, The Baby from Dinosaurs, another show that I remember not liking. But this must have been around the height of the Disney afternoon block that they used to have on TV. Let's see here. Huckleberry Hound. Now, let me say, with these older ones, I've always had this kind of fascination with the past, even as a kid, for whatever reason. But it also tied in with, as a kid, you just don't have a whole lot of money. And I wanted to read my comic books, and I had a thing for the past, and it just so worked out that I could get older comics, usually for less than new ones at the time. And so a lot of these have price tags on them. I'll guarantee you that a lot of them are not accurate. I think I bought a bunch of sleeves, random sleeves at some point, probably from the same place that I used to buy the comics. The place was called All Seas. It might still exist. So just be prepared for a lot of very uncharacteristic things for a 90s child. So this one is evidently from 1970, Huckleberry Hound, and I can all but guarantee you I did not pay $4 for it. And I've got another Huckleberry Hound, and I'd be willing to bet this one's a bit older. This price tag might be accurate, maybe, maybe not. I'd be willing to bet this is probably from more like 1966, 7 in there. Huckleberry Hound number 3 with Pixie and Dixie on the cover. I think that was their name. And of course, reading these old comics as a kid, that was my exposure to, reading the back pages of the comics, seeing ads for stuff that younger generations, including my own, aren't all that familiar with, like sea monkeys and all this bizarre junk you could send away for, and you might not have ever received. I've heard of people ordering stuff and it never actually showing up. Let's see, I've got another Woody Woodpecker one here. And this one would have to be late 60s, early 70s. I don't think any of these are too valuable. This condition is pretty representative of the norm. Got an ad for Daisy BB guns on the back. Alas, something in this overtly politically correct culture that you probably won't see much of anymore. Let's see, this is February 1969. And all the great stuff you could buy. Stuff that I'd love to see someday. Okay, moving on. I'm going to try and keep this from becoming too long here. Here we go with the D again. And Huey, Dewey, and Louie. I'd be willing to bet this is another late 60s, early 70s one. 70, it looks like. Maybe 71. If the disconnect between the covers and what's in the comic is anything to go by that I've been noticing so far. I don't really remember this one, but 1972... I'd be willing to bet this is exactly what I paid for it, too. 95 cents. Dennis the Menace birthday special. I'm 5, going on 21. Let's see here. Here's one I don't remember either. This probably from the early 70s, maybe mid-70s. The all-new Flintstones and Pebbles. So I'm guessing there was some sort of Pebbles-centric Flintstones comic at some point. Your guess is as good as mine. Let's see. I do remember this one, and I think the price tag is accurate. And I tried to read this once, and it damn near disintegrated in my hand. The label on here is no accident. So Star Trek, I think this is another early to mid-70s one. And water damage, yeah. I remember when I tried to read this thing was just flaking off. So I'm definitely not going to try and open this one, especially nowadays. I'd be really surprised if this is worth $2.95 in this condition. Let's see. Here's one that I bet you the price tag is accurate, because I remember having some sort of like little windfall one year, like maybe it was a birthday or something, and I just splurged and bought this really, by my standards, expensive comic. And again, my very odd tastes then and now, although I haven't seen an episode in a very long time, Beverly Hillbillies. It says 63 down here. I'd be willing to bet it's actually a couple of years later. Issue number 20. Look it up if you're inclined. I definitely remember this one because I think it was the oldest comic I've ever owned, or just about. And I remember this being from 56, 57 in there. I don't really want to take it out of the bag, just in the name of time. But Bugs Bunny and the Disappearing Incas. And I seem to remember something along the lines of what you're seeing on the cover here being the story. Let's see. This one is from the late 80s. I know that much. And I'd be willing to bet that I did not pay the full cover price, $3.95. I'd be willing to bet I paid at best half. So the Honeymooners, I had to have heard of the Honeymooners at some point back then, and Cyndi Lauper interview. I don't really remember much about this one, but yeah, I have a feeling it was probably pretty unremarkable. One of those just kind of 80s, 90s tie-in cash-ins. And speaking of which, the Three Stooges in 3D in a Ziploc bag, because I must have run out of the little sleeves. And this, I remember from reading it at the time, I think dates to 88 or 89. And I've still got, I think I've mentioned this in an archive episode before, that I've had this pair of Friday the 13th Part 3 3D glasses kicking around forever. This is where they disappeared to. Now I just have to remember it's in there. Oh, let's see here. I've got a bunch of Heathcliff comics, and these would date from, let's see, 82 to 88. I remember reading these a fair amount. I don't really remember the plots, but I guess Heathcliff went to England, and then I think some of these were just gag covers. Heathcliff's Funhouse. I don't really remember that one. And of course, I might have to dig through some of these again. Just to take a look at some of these ads. Mad Balls. I don't remember those at all. Care Bears. I remember seeing the movie Howard the Duck at some point when I was in grade school, and then seeing the comic book at another point, and was expecting something like the movie, in my naivete. And this is, I believe, I'm not positive, I'll find out when I get to the bottom of the briefcase, but I think this is the only issue of Howard the Duck I've ever owned, which I have a feeling I'd probably appreciate a little more now than I did 20 plus years ago. And this thing, geez, I'm just getting myself distracted here. Some of these ads here. The LaSalle course. I don't even know what that is. Oh, accounting, business management, yada, yada, yada. But no VCR repair yet, so this must have been prior to that. 1976, November of 1976. Let's see. I've got two of these. Ripley's Believe It or Not. And I would imagine these are from the early mid-70s. I remember reading these and freaking myself out a little bit over them. So here they are. I'm not going to open them up, but these have some really nice artwork. I had forgotten about these. Let's see. There's another Star Trek one here, and this one I remember because I read it over and over again for some reason. Oh yeah, because it was supposedly the last issue. This is from, I think, 1982, if memory serves. And I think it was more of a tie-in or lead up to Star Trek II. And I'm really going to have to go through some of these ads again just to remember some of the stuff. I'm more interested in the ads at this point, clearly. Let's see, here's some more loose ones, and I found a couple more Ripleys. So here's a couple more of these Ripleys, believe it or not, and these are not in good condition, but hey, maybe I'll find out when these actually date to. So 40 cents in 1979. And this is what I was referring to earlier, buying junk with coupons or selling Grit, wasn't what the name of the magazine, which I don't think exists anymore. All these lovely things you can get. 100 toy soldiers for $1.75. Let's see, this must be older. This was only 15 cents newsstand. This one's from 71. And again, it must be selling stuff. You selling stuff. Do you need extra money? I think we all could. Of course, $100 won't get you as far these days, unfortunately, will it? Let's see. Here's one. This must be late 70s. Beetle Bailey. I don't remember much about this. This would be 1980, actually. And an ad for the Star Trek movie. Which I remember being kind of boring. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember that first Star Trek movie being kind of dull. Let's see. I've always loved this, then and now. Rocky and Bullwinkle, or Bullwinkle and Rocky. I'm not sure at what point Bullwinkle started getting top billing, and Dudley Do-Right. And this one is pretty beaten up too. Again, here's more selling seeds for money, like carrot seeds, beet seeds, flower seeds. And this one is from 1973. Let's see here. I'll probably lose my comedy snob card for this one. I've always loved the Three Stooges. I just do deal with it. And I've got a few in here. I definitely remember having a handful of these. And so this is one of the gold key ones from the early 70s. Which, judging by the titles, I would guess were just comic book scoped versions of some of the shorts from the 30s and 40s. Yeah. Real sexy artwork. So here's another one. And I would assume this also dates to the early 70s. And I definitely remember getting this one just because it was such an odd thing. And I will guarantee you the price tag on this is not accurate. I would never have spent this much on a comic book. This is something that was given away at Kimmies Shoes. And I think this dates to the early to mid-60s. Just ahead of or just around the time the Stooges cartoon was happening. And, oh, I'd forgotten about this. There was a spin-off of the Three Stooges in the 70s in comic book form, and it was the Little Stooges. And it is just every... I'd be willing to bet this was actually a hair late for peace and love and all that. This was probably more like mid-70s, I'd be willing to bet. But you got the smiling Jeep, love, and I wish I had something witty to say, but I don't think I could say anything that could out-weird that cover. Okay, getting down to the last two comics, finally. I watched a lot of Nick at Night as a kid, and one of my favorites was Welcome Back, Kotter. So when I found some comics, I must have jumped on them, and I'd be willing to bet these price tags are pretty accurate. This one says 95 cents. So here's a Welcome Back, Kotter comic book, and I guess that must be Julie, Kotter's wife, at the bottom right. And finally, the last one. And I don't remember much about these, but I would imagine that they were probably just edited, scoped versions of the TV scripts. And I guess, yeah, everybody in Kotter's class, the Sweat Hogs, are trying to convince Kotter's family that they're related, and everybody just happens to have a mustache because, Gabe Kaplan. Of course, that wouldn't work too well now, because last time I saw Gabe Kaplan, he had a full beard. Oh well. That's all of them. So thank you for watching. Thanks for indulging this little trip down memory lane for me. I also found a briefcase full of Mad magazines, and some of them date as far back as 1969. I actually did thumb through those. I'm doing real good today. Maybe I ought to quit. All right, that's it for this Ben's Junk. I'll see you again soon.